If they drowned, they were innocent. If they floated to the top, they must be a witch. 20 years later, little Ann Putnam comes out and says, I lied. She never did a thing.
And it all started with an inheritance dispute. Welcome to Religious Rejects. I'm Alycia, she, her.
And I'm Christine.
And today we are continuing our series on religious rejects from history. And Christine has some great stuff for us today, and I can't wait to hear more about it.
Yes, the real witches of Salem. That's what we're doing. Just, Real Housewives. Okay, never mind, cut that. Anyway, it didn't work. Okay. Yes, today I get to talk about the witch trials, which I'm actually really excited about because, it was horrible. Let's just say that. But it's just so deep and rich with history and what women had to go through. And yeah, actually, I'm not sure why I'm excited because it's really horrible what was done to these women.
Yeah.
I think it's more just the romanticizing that has happened over, lately about witches and all of that stuff. So it feels kind of fun. Wasn't probably fun for many of these women. Witch trials, or just looking for witches and the hysteria about witches, this all started in Europe in the 1400s. There was a little bit, we talked about Joan of Arc, they thought she was a witch, and that was, 1400s. And so anytime a woman would possess any type of maybe communication with the other world or could do something with herbs, and people would say that they were healed. A lot of these women were called healers. Some of them were midwives. And a lot of that, the midwives especially, I just can't even imagine. You have a system where the poor just cannot get adequate medical attention. The doctors that understood what was supposed to happen were saved primarily for the upper echelon of society. So therefore, when a woman was having a baby and she needed somebody, she would take a neighbor woman and they would all kind of work together. And then some of them continued it and they were the midwives. And so these women, unfortunately, would be the ones that were called out because not only did they offer the service of delivering a child, they had all these other things like chamomile to calm everything, or these herbs that they would kind of bring with them just to try to make things easier for the mother. And somehow that put a target on their back later.
Yeah.
So for the most part, the peak and the highest hysteria around witches and women is probably between 1400s and 1750.
Okay.
Obviously, we do not have the time for me to cover all of those centuries. So we're going to give you an overview of what was going on.
Yeah.
During this time, you've had the plague, people are dying. Things like that cannot be really explained. They don't know where, when we had COVID, for the most part, we're okay, it started here and then it spread here and all that. But they don't know anything like that during medieval times. And so there's this idea that this is God either punishing them or Satan being released onto cultures and taking people out.
Yeah.
Kind of went back and forth because really that's their understanding of God. We're talking for the most part, the people that really understood God and had the knowledge would kind of use it against people to keep them into power. And the people that didn't really understand God because they were illiterate or they didn't read Latin or any of that, or they even had their own copy because that didn't come until later.
Yeah.
They just had to take everybody's word for it.
Yeah.
That God was punishing them. So you start to see things happen. And then you do have the Bible that really does kind of help feed this kind of frenzy that if God was mad at you, he'd send locusts or he'd send this. So, you kind of have that basis. It starts to go, though, the other way. It starts to be like now we're dealing with people starting to think well, what if you actually work for Satan and you don't like me. So you're going to start cursing me. So if bad things start happening to me, then I must be cursed. And so that whole idea begins to really take root. And as in, most cases, a scapegoat needs to be found. So it would be older women, it would be widows, which, think about it. These are just women trying to take care of themselves. They probably don't have money. So they're using whatever resources they have, but it also looks as if they're kind of skirting the church a little bit. So instead of going to God and the church for healing, they're like, I got this. I'm going to make a tea, and this is going to help me. So they really kind of looked into remedies and using the earth. And that just is, well, men can't control that. So that's an issue.
Got it.
So they begin to question these women as, is it more than just some woman putting herbs together? Is she also sprinkling a little spell? Is she listening? Like, whereas Joan of Arc heard voices and they were angels, are these women hearing voices and they're demons?
Got it.
You always have to go back to Eve. She just gets thrown in women's face over and over. And because Eve was the weaker vessel and was the one that was easily deceived by the snake in a tree, well, all women need to be careful. They are the sex that can be deceived easier. So it begins to get very sexual too. They begin to say that the Satan is seducing these women. That's why they're single, because no man would allow his wife to be seduced by Satan.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And it gets very weird and graphic. And there are books that begin to come out of Germany who was having their own they were kind of the beginning of the big witch kind of things. And they were trying to kind of corner the market on here's what you do, and you're going to need a witch finder, and you're going to need to do this, and here's how you can test it, all of these things.
So they kind of set up a system.
They
sort of
set up
thing.
a system that ended up being used later. And in some of these books that they were passing along, they have pictures of these women kissing the butt of Satan. And I'm like, okay. So, I mean, this is really what they believe.
Is this like an early porn thing or something?
Well, I'm wondering.
It sounds kind of weird.
Right? I know. I was like, this is kind of weird. And I'm sure these women were like, yeah, okay, whatever. Yeah. Like, I'm just trying to help my neighbor have her twins. That's all I'm doing. And helping her heal after. But okay, yeah, I'm kissing the butt of Satan. Whatever. I want to talk a little bit about the way they tested, because this was just so bizarre. So one of the things that they would do is they call it searching for marks. And if they found things, but see, like, women had scars, women have moles, women have that. So that's why you always have the character of the witch with the moles all over them, but I'm like, listen, women, I mean, yeah, we got scars. And so the science of it, they were not aware of. So they were taking women's bodies and then using it against them in that sense. They would take this like 3-inch pin and they would heat it up and they would strip a woman down and they would start poking areas in her body. And if it didn't bleed, then that was proof that she was a witch.
So the women would be sitting there bleeding from them poking these pins in them all over their bodies.
Yes. I mean, it was just silly things like that, but they would poke them all over. And we're going to come back to that, a very gruesome image of that later. But yeah, that's just some of the things
and they're
that
all
they
naked
would do.
in front of these men doing this.
In front of these men.
Oh my,
yes.
That's horrifying.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And then they would keep these women awake for hours, days, and then ask them questions. Well, of course, then sleep deprivation comes in, hallucinations come in. And so now these women are hallucinating, and there it is. She's a witch. It's like, no, she's exhausted.
Right.
She's just exhausted.
Yeah, that is called torture.
Yeah, exactly. And again, I say this tongue-in-cheek. It's not obviously my favorite because this is horrific. But oh my gosh, why are people so stupid? Kind of a thing. There was the swim test. Okay? They would take a woman's thumbs, cross them, and then tie them to their big toes, and then throw them into the water. If they drowned, they were innocent. if they floated to the top, they must be a witch. How many women, and I believe this probably didn't stay around long, because after a while, you're starting to run out of women and everybody's innocent because they're drowning. Although some women weren't, because they knew how to float. You know what I mean? It's just like, so I just think, but then they would die later. So you're killing women either way, inadvertently or on purpose. I mean, it's just crazy. I was like, these people were not very smart. Anyway.
And witches only could ever be women. Men were never witches.
Well, there were men that were controlled by demons, and you'll see that in Salem. There was some men, including some of the men that maybe even started it, which is what kind of got really fun, because it all ended up to be about hearsay. And then you'll see it also kind of got to be a little bit about land grabs, like in Salem. There was somebody trying to make a land grab, but we'll get to her.
If you're rethinking faith with us, subscribe and turn on notifications. We'll see you in the next conversation. Now, back to the show.
Let me just tell you about Agnes Sampson, who was a wise woman, a healer, midwife, living in the village of Keith, which is in northern Scotland. She is very well respected. They adore her in that village, okay? She has been around for a while. She's always available. She's just very, very well respected. In Scotland right now, during Agnes's time, is a king by the name of King James VI.
Okay.
King James VI is desperately trying to become King James I of England. So this is Queen Elizabeth I is the queen on the throne right now. She has had no heirs. She doesn't have everybody. So all the people that are quote unquote in line are trying to make nice. And the best way to do that, to get in her good favor, is to be a Protestant and be highly religious. Okay? Because the last thing they want to do is put somebody Catholic on the throne, which takes it back the other way. So for years now, England's been going back and forth between Catholic and Protestant, and they just want it to end. So now Elizabeth has been in office. She's been on the throne for a while, and so they want to continue that. So James is a good option. So James has started to hear about all of these witch things from Germany. He's starting to get very involved in demonology. He ended up writing a book, oh, by the way, on demonology.
Oh my gosh.
Yes. And so he's really kind of seeing the spiritual side, and not only seeing it, but believing that demons can control things. Okay, so one of the things James has to do in order to be worthy of being the King of England, he has to find a wife, and he has to find a good wife. So he finds this wife, Anne of Denmark, and they decide they're going to get married long distance, which is really cute, right? Yeah, let's just make an alliance from way out, and yay, now we're married. I mean, they weren't even together. They were married by proxy. So now she's got to come to Scotland, right?
I didn't even know that you could do that.
Yeah, well, neither did I. So she begins her journey from Denmark to Scotland. A huge storm comes up and knocks their boat off course, and they end up in Norway. So King James is like, whoa, we're going to have to go get her. So now he sends boats out. All of these boats keep getting battered down by these storms. Finally, he's like, I'll do it myself. So he gets on the boat. He gets to Anne. They start to sail back to Scotland. Again, another storm. So now he's starting to think, somebody does not want me to marry this woman. And he believes that there are people out there, witches, demons, putting curses on him. Okay?
Oh my gosh.
So he believes it. So he gets back to Scotland, and he's just like, something's against me. Somebody is cursing me. Something's going on. Somehow through the culture, Agnes Sampson's name comes up. Now her own village is like, no, it's Agnes. She's great. But he starts to hear this name. Well, she's very powerful. I mean, she helped this and that. And so just that alone just kind of brought her up to the center. They bring her in and they start questioning her, of course. And she's like, no. And in fact, most accounts say that she just stood there stoic and just didn't say a word. And she was like, no. You know, like, can I go home now? You know, I've got to meet with a woman who's having a baby,
Right.
you know, in 2 weeks, and I need to get her ready. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, she's like, I got things to do. But she just stood there and she stood there. And for the most part, at first, King James didn't really believe anything. But they continued to question her. They continued to torture her. And yes, this is where it got really bad, is they took that whole witch prick thing that I told you about. But first, they shave all of her hair off of her body. So they've shaved her head, they've shaved everything, and they start poking in her genital areas as well. So she's fully naked in front of all these men, no hair, and they're poking her. And they're doing the whole sleep deprivation stuff. They're doing all of these things. And finally, she's like, yeah, fine, I'm a witch. And oh, by the way, this is what you told your wife on the first night you met her. So she actually kind of like blows his mind a little bit because she tells him something nobody would know.
Wow.
So that freaks him out. Now, I have to be honest with you, I'm not sure how much that is true. That's really what King James said happened, and she whispered into his ear. So how much of that is really legend and not?
Right.
The bottom line is she did start to confess, though. But again, after all that, who wouldn't? Like, you know you're going to die no matter what. Fine. So she confesses, and then she starts throwing out names, which is where things always get fun in the witch trials, because the people that start naming names sometimes name names that are inconvenient. So one of the judges that was over the whole thing, she starts naming his wife, you know what I mean? And things like that begin to happen. It's like when you start to bring in these more powerful women, not the women that were marginalized and at the bottom of the tier, Agnes starts naming all kinds of names. And so all these women are now brought in. And it's just crazy how the hysteria and the paranoia just takes over. I do know that, you know, they also had something called witch finders, which these were paid men to go into towns, and they would cleanse your town of any witches. And for a lot of times, the councils themselves would have them come in and pay them. We had a witch finder general in England named Matthew Hopkins, and it was just crazy. And he would charge all these fees to locate all these suspected witches. Well, after a few years, he was actually accused. And there was no real way to defend it.
Right.
And so after a while, I think, especially in England, things start to calm down a little bit because they're realizing that, okay, wait, there's really no defense for this. I mean, all these innocent women are dying because we're throwing them in the waters and not getting them out in time when they sink. And that's not a good thing. And now you've got people, you know, accusing the witch finders. And oh, by the way, the witch finders are expensive. So people can't afford this now. Like some of these towns are like, okay, we can't afford you.
Wow.
So it just kind of tamped everything down. But the story of Agnes Sampson is really, really sad. She is strangled and then they burn her at the stake. Obviously, they are burning them because they're scared that the devil could reanimate their body after death. So they would kill them because they felt that was a little bit more humane than just burning him at the stake like they did with Joan of Arc. So, yeah.
I guess
crazy.
Progress? I don't know. It doesn't sound like, okay.
Getting a little bit compassionate? I don't know.
But they poke them all over first?
They poke 'em. So she does end up dying, and obviously, yeah. And I just want to make sure that everybody's aware that this King James that we're talking of is the same one that has a Bible named after him. You know, so the King James Bible. So that, I mean, that gives you, he was a very religious man doing all of this.
Not a great guy, though. necessarily.
Well, probably not.
Yeah.
No. I mean, he really wrote in a lot of stuff in that Bible, really wanting the monarchy to be in charge and the sole kind of leader. Most people believe that that whole stuff that was written about obeying your authority and all of that good stuff was actually more just what he put in his translation, or what he had his translators put in to stress. And of course they did it because they wanted to please the king.
Of course.
And then that's how we ended up with make sure that you obey your
Master,
authorities.
yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, so starts to die down in Europe. But of course, Americans being behind, it's now just getting started.
Okay.
And I think for the most part, everybody is very familiar with the Salem witch trials and the how horrifying it was, and the Crucible, the book that is written about that time that's actually kind of talking about the scapegoating during McCarthyism. And again, that's kind of what you see in life when I'm watching all this, is how many times we really just start to scapegoat groups just because they don't fit in, or they're not controllable, or they're weird, you know, all of that. Fast forward, here we are now in Salem. The Puritans, of course, have taken over. They are a very religious sect, so they are also looking for demons under every rock. But this one is just, there are these two girls, these young girls, okay? They're playing with eggs and water, using that whole divination kind of thing, like if the egg floats this and if that sinks this. But basically it's like divination. Shortly after this, they get very sick. Both girls. They live in the same house. I think they were cousins or something.
I'm just kidding.
Right? I know, right? I mean, did they eat something? I mean, you know, there's could be so many things.
Yeah.
But they get violently sick. But they're having fits. And I don't know if the coughing fits turned into something or what, but they're having fits and they're yelling and screaming and they're just not right and blah, 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 blah. Down the street, their friend Ann Putnam starts to have fits as well. So now it's like, oh my God, we have an epidemic. What is happening? At some point, people start to get concerned. Well, maybe it's the devil. Maybe they've been cursed. Are there any witches around? Okay. So of course, what do? Well, you ask the girls, of course. Have you been playing with anything? Have you been doing anything that would invite the devil? You know, have you seen anybody around you doing things? And of course they say, yeah. There is a slave in their household. She's a Caribbean woman. And of course, they're going to point her out. They point her out. There's also another woman they point out who is just a homeless beggar woman, who, oh, by the way, has a 4-year-old daughter. And I just kind of wanted to say, you have a young woman, single mother, who is a beggar woman, okay, with a 4-year-old daughter that the town, supposedly of Christians, knows about and nobody's taken care of. No, instead of let's take care of her, let's throw her under the bus.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So the neighbor girl, Ann Putnam, she also outs somebody, Sarah Osborne. Now these 3 women start everything. Okay. I would like to point out that, and I'm a little offended, I understand the times, but Sarah Osborne is always described as an elderly woman. She was 49 when she died.
Wow, yeah.
So I guess we are elderly.
Yes, beyond elderly
I
at this
know.
point.
Anyway, I was a little offended at that, but thought, okay, but maybe for them, that was elderly.
Yeah.
I mean, she didn't live past 50, so, you know.
Right.
Anyway, so this all starts, and of course, the same kind of things happened. Unfortunately, the 4-year-old daughter was actually questioned about whether or not her mother was a witch.
Oh my goodness.
And they decide she's a witch too. I know.
What?
Horrifying. Just horrifying what they did. But it did create this hysteria. There were a lot more men in this section that kind of died. One man just died with a whole bunch of, like, they just pressed concrete onto his chest.
Oh.
I mean, it's just horrible because, again, some of these men were like, no, 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 which was great, but also they died then too because you must be in cahoots.
Because they were trying to defend the women that were being accused of being a witch.
With that being said, I just want to share this one little story of what was happening between two families before all of this kicked off.
Okay.
And let's go to Sarah Osborne for a second. She actually, this was her second husband. Her first husband happened to be the brother-in-law to her neighbor, which was Putnam, of Ann Putnam's father. So these people are neighbors and they're in-laws. They buy the farm next door, 150 acres. So, I mean, they're not like next to each other, but they're within, there's a reason they probably live next to each other. The first husband, his name was Prince. He died very tragically, very early. And in his will, he said the house will go to my wife, Sarah. And then when our boys come of age, they were 6 and 2 at the time, they will get the house. The person that is executing the will is the Putnams, who live next door. So they're the executors of the will. So now Sarah brings on this Irish indentured servant. He pays off his debt, and they fall in love, let's just say. And he's living at the house.
Okay.
Now I think this is very interesting that he's living with her at the house. I know that there were some people had certain rules for widows. They didn't have to follow the whole virgin rules. Widows there was a little bit more leniency, but I don't think living in sin was one of the leniencies.
Yeah.
So they're living in sin, and then people are very upset about that. So they're like, fine, we'll get married. They get married. But she says, hey, I'm still around. I'm still doing well. I've got a new husband. I want to keep the house. So they start to go and they want to keep the house. Now the sons are now, in my opinion, they would be of age. It's been 20 years since their father died. So they're 26 and 22. Okay. The sons go to their uncle over here and is like, she wants the house. How dare she with that man? Okay, all this happens. They fight for years over this until the day that little Ann Putnam Jr., because they were juniors for women back in those days, gets sick and then points the finger at Sarah as the witch.
Isn't that interesting?
Yes. So the sons corroborate and say, yeah, she's a witch, just so they can get that house.
Wow.
Yes. So Sarah then ends up, being killed. And 20 years later, little Ann Putnam comes out and says, I lied. She never did a thing.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, I give it up to her for admitting it. But, oh my goodness. It's a little too late.
Well, and all the other people then that got caught up in it too, that were then accused of being witches, and it all started with an inheritance dispute.
Yeah. So it's like some of these things, it really was convenient. You have people that really were scared, but then you had people that used it because it was convenient to get rid of other people. So poor Sarah Osborne is just, she falls in love with the wrong second man, apparently, and all of that. So anyway, these women are just rejected from these cultures. First of all, out of fear and suspicion, because a woman alone apparently is very scary. Because a lot of these women are single, widows, just making their way in the world. They're trying to help other women, and they seem to have some sort of power outside of God. And there's such a suspicion when it comes to that.
Well, and I mean, what were they supposed to do? I mean, women, if their husband died or something like that, I mean, you have very few opportunities or ways to support yourself.
Right.
And I mean, you couldn't own property.
Right.
So what do you do? I mean, there's all kinds of issues there. So that's really challenging.
Right. A lot of these women, too, were people like Sarah that was beginning to challenge those ideas and say, wait, why can't I own property? Why do I got to give it to these two when I'm still here and I have a husband? Where are we supposed to go?
And then in that one case in Salem, one of the women was an enslaved woman, a Caribbean. How many of them were enslaved women? Do you know?
She was pretty much it, and she survived.
Did she?
She survived because after being tortured, she also started naming names. Okay? So they actually, again, maybe learning from the past, I don't know. But for whatever reason, she was spared execution and just started naming names. Now, again, then she starts to name people that are higher ups, another judge's wife. Okay. And so at that point, because, once you name one person, then they name somebody, and then they name somebody, and eventually it's going to be somebody's wife that's where the man gets like, no. That's kind of how it all kind of quelled in Salem. One of the other ways that people were being accused was through dreams. So if I had a dream about you and that you were going to kill me, and if I woke up and told people about it, you would be a suspect, because why are you entering my dream?
Oh my goodness.
Right. And so you have increase in Cotton Mather. I don't know if you've heard of them. They're big time, not great people when it comes to the slave issues and slavery in America. But on this, they were very careful to say, you can't judge off of somebody's dreams. We're not doing that. So that kind of quelled things a little bit too.
Okay.
Because I was like, well, thank you. Because think about what we know about dreams today. It's like if you're like how many of us have binged something 8 hours and then that night you go to bed and you have a dream? I binged Daredevil the other day and I dreamed I was Daredevil. You know what I mean?
Right.
And that's kind of what the Mathers were kind of like, let's hold back on that one. And then, of course, there's people that are innocent that are dying, and good, holy women that were probably holding the church together that were probably being, and you can't do that because who's going to do, the potlucks? So we can't get rid of her. She's holding everything together, So it's just very interesting. And again, very convenient, It works when they want it to, but then they pull it back when it starts to be inconvenient, and the back and forth.
What was the kind of latest witch hunt time period as far as actually looking for witches, in the United States?
In the United States, Salem witch trials was probably the last one, 1692 to 1693. Okay. Very short period of time, which is interesting compared to some of the ones from Europe. But yeah, this is a very short one. Before that, you had the Hartford, Connecticut witch trials. That went on from 1647 to 1670. So that was a very long time.
Wow.
Yeah. A lot of times they were much longer processes. But I think the Salem one, we think of it so often probably because of the book, The Crucible, and it came back into our imagination as we all had to read it in school.
Right. It's like it was a social contagion. It was just you had to start blaming people, otherwise you were going to be, hurt yourself. And that's used in various ways over the centuries in other kinds of situations, like governmental situations, or as you mentioned earlier, the communism, the search for communists in the 50s here in the United States.
Yeah, even today, you have people turning on each other and calling in ICE.
Well, there was a case recently of a woman who reconnected with a man that she met when she was much younger. He'd been stationed in Europe, and she fell in love with an American GI. They didn't get together then. They both married people. She lived in France, he lived in the US. Their spouses died. They reconnected after that death, got married. It was this beautiful love story. She moved to Alabama, then her husband dies.
The second one.
The second husband. She moves, the American. So she had moved to the United States for him, and then he dies. The sons want the house
Oh, very
from her.
similar.
Yeah. And so one of the sons is a state trooper that works for the state of Alabama. He called ICE. ICE comes and arrests her, takes her in her pajamas to an ICE detention center, and then deport her back to France. 85 years old. It's
Yeah.
insane.
Really, have we learned anything from history?
Yeah, people will use, I guess, the means that they have at their disposal. And at the time of the witch trials, it was, you know, you could accuse someone of being a witch without really having much evidence. Or you could easily fabricate evidence, I guess, you know?
Yeah. I often wonder if the slave, I believe her name was, and hopefully I'm pronouncing this right, is Tituba. There is a part of me that wonders how many people she named were just people that she didn't like, you know? And she was spared, thank God, but I wonder if, like, as she was serving people, if there were some that were more kind to her than others, and she chose to say, yeah, so-and-so, Susan down the street, she's a witch, you know?
Yeah, right.
Because you just don't know.
You don't, yeah.
Thanks for tuning in. Up next, will the rejects keep, rethink, or reject today's topic? Stay with us.
So what do we reject?
Yeah.
Obviously all of it.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, there's no way to defend against it.
No. I will say, you know, even my own upbringing in the evangelical circles, there is still a very intense idea that the devil works in our midst. And not necessarily that so-and-so's a devil and so-and-so's this, but that they can be used by and, you know, or possessed by. And it just makes me, you know, while we've come a ways, we haven't come that far when it comes to religion and demons and demonology. There's still a big idea that people can be controlled by the demon, that the demon somehow has all this power. And
I never really understood how, if God is as powerful as evangelicals say that God is, how is it that the devil is as powerful as it is in that world of evangelical theology? That has never made sense to me. Why would God allow that? It just doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, and I think that was my issue too. I was like, I don't remember the Bible ever telling me that demons were omnipotent and can read my mind. So why am I worried about him reading my mind?
Yeah.
You know? Or how do I know that voice is him? And again, it's scapegoating too, if you think about it. Well, it wasn't me. I didn't think that.
It was the
devil.
devil.
The devil made me do it.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, and we make fun of it now.
Yeah.
But, you know, it has been used against people. And I just think that it's an extreme case of rejection by a community.
Yes.
In labeling someone and scapegoating them for the ills of something that's happening, you know, like whether it's an outbreak of a disease. I mean, they didn't have germ theory.
No.
They didn't know bacteria, viruses, all that stuff. It doesn't excuse it. And, you know, it's like what it tells me is that people always want a reason
Yes.
why something's happening.
Yes.
They have to have meaning out of something. It can't just be random or whatever, that there has to be a reason why this is happening. And if they can't come up with them themselves, they'll make it up, is my sense of it. And so, yeah, I see this all as a very extreme and violent way of rejecting people that are different, really, that don't have some of the resources that the other people in the community have, that don't have the power, that are women and not men, and so they have a different status. I mean, maybe have different knowledge as far as like access to healing or what kinds of herbal concoctions you can make to help with health conditions and things like that. But it's a way of othering that kind of knowledge. And it's very sobering, this whole history of this kind of trials and scapegoating, and the amount of violence and the number of deaths and innocent people being killed because of this sort of mass psychological hysteria.
Yeah.
It's very sad. It's very depressing. And it just says how evil human beings can be to each other. And that's the other thing that I think about. Is like, why do we need to create something like the devil when humans are so capable themselves of just being horrible and evil and creating all kinds of terrible ways to torture people? It's very sad.
But not only that, but the missing of the oneness. We are all one, you know, and it wasn't until some of these men's wives were accused that they were like, oh,
wait a second. Oh, yeah.
You know, you're fine accusing a 4-year-old girl who cannot articulate that she's not a witch because she's 4.
Wow.
But you know what I mean? Like, where's the compassion there?
Yeah, I don't know.
And I think we all need a lot more of that. We are one. You know, we're all in this together, and stop othering.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah. So there's a lot to reject out of this whole sad part of our history in the Christian tradition. So thanks for that dive into some of those cases.
Yeah, I'm sorry I was too gleeful for some of them. It is a very sad time, and one that I hope that we are not doomed to repeat. I really feel like some of the things that we're doing here, reminding people of how and why people rejected over the last couple centuries. Hopefully, my prayer is that somebody will be like, oh, wait, are we doing that again? Because we are in some ways. And maybe you and I have just solved world peace.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah,
That's what I'm hoping.
I hope so too.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So you never know what you're going to get from
That's
us, and we
right.
can solve, you know, the world's problems in a easy peasy podcast
Easy peasy.
episode. So
35
thanks
minutes or less.
thanks for joining us to hear about the history of witch trials in the Christian tradition. And we are going to be continuing our series on other religious rejects, famous religious rejects from history in the next several episodes. So be sure to come back and check those out.
Thanks for joining us. That stands up for herself, a woman that is maybe to the church kind of like skirting the church and skirting God and healing. Should we do that again?
Oh my God.
No more coffee for you.
No.
Oh my gosh. You're going to be like kicked off the set.